So Renfield can be referred to as the Nicolas Cage Dracula movie, for obvious reasons. But yeah, it's a horror comedy, and I think that this is going to be one of those films where I feel like the casting saves so much of this film, and it's like the main reason to come and see it, which is great for like the marketing of this because. Like, I mean, think about how you're going to sell this film. You know, it's Nicolas Cage as Dracula, and it plays up Nicolas Cage in the Dracula role as you would expect. You want to see him campy. You want to see him, chewing scenery. You want to see him in, like, ridiculous outfits and just having a ball with this role. And he does. And, yeah, if that's, like, the sole reason you're coming to see this film, you will not be let down. But thankfully... so much of the casting and I think just the general tone of this film pull it together so well. Because obviously, by the title, this is not just about Dracula. It's about Renfield, played by Nicholas Hoult. The Renfield, of course, the right-hand man of Dracula. And it's an interesting concept because you have Renfield considering, he's worked for Dracula long enough and starts realizing, maybe it's not the best being the henchman for like this monster who sucks the blood of people and is just cruel to everybody, especially me. So maybe I might want to try to find a life for myself. So I like that Renfield is this character who's trying to take some agency in his life. He attends a therapy group of other people who've been in toxic relationships and tries to find a way to get over Dracula. Now that's an interesting concept, and I feel like that would be good enough for like a short film. But this is a movie that definitely wants to have fun with that material. And I feel like with the toxic relationship angle, I feel like there's only so much you can have in terms of like comedy and drama, because with this movie, it feels like it's trying to walk this fine line between actually being earnest about, having self-esteem and standing up to someone who's abusing you in a relationship, while at the same time being a very ridiculous film that's overloaded with blood, guts, and gore, and has fun with like the vampire concept. And it tries to balance it throughout this film. And there are scenes where they try to do both at the same time, and it's clearly not working. Like one element is more dominant than the other, and clearly, like whenever Nic Cage is in a scene as Dracula, he's camping it up. You can't help but laugh, even in scenes where he's meant to be absolutely terrifying, and you're supposed to be feeling sorry for Renfield. You're kind of like on the edge. You're laughing, but at the same time, it's like, oh, you feel bad for this guy, like, but I feel bad for Holt, but I'm laughing with Cage, so it's like you're kind of torn. I think it's more surprising that so many of those scenes. There are more scenes like that work than ones that kind of like fall apart in trying to pick and choose the different tones that it's going for. So to give this film more to do, it takes place in a city, and Dracula ends up hooking up with the mafia. And not just any mafia, but like a mafia that controls the city and openly admits that like they're evil. They're like, hey, if you're a villain, come on by. That's our whole game. And I think that's why it works so well that you have Ben Schwartz playing one of the mob enforcers, and he is having way too much fun in this role. Like he's giddy, he's goofy, he takes like violent pleasure in everything that he does. That it's just every interaction that he has with Dracula, and his mafia mother is just so wonderful. And his mafia mother is Bella, played by what's her name? Shore. I always mispronounce her name. Shore Agladashu. I swear. I mean, she has a deep voice, and she's great as kind of like this kind of like calculative mob boss. So yeah, Dracula has allies that he's teaming up with, and thankfully Renfield does as well. He hooks up with a cop trying to take down this mafia as well. The cop is Rebecca, played by Awkwafina. And I feel like at this point, like Awkwafina is getting typecasted in roles where she's mostly expected to react and yell at everything that is going on and overreact to every situation. It feels like she's been doing that with nearly every film, with with stuff like Crazy Rich Asians and Jumanji. And it feels like the only time she's gotten out of that comfort zone was, with stuff like The Farewell, which is which, by the way, if you're dogging on Awkwafina, go watch The Farewell, and you will see her at her best. But I feel like for this type of film, she works well because like she's mostly expected just to react to all the violence here and just be like, yeah, this is messed up. So more or less acting as an overreactive audience surrogate. And on that level, she mostly gets the job done. And I feel like they use just enough of her, especially for a film like this, which is 90 minutes long and breezes by with the pace. Like it's tightly edited. It's quick. Like it has a lot of like fun avenues that it pursues. Like I really did like the opening introduction where you get to see Nicolas Cage and Nicholas Hoult in their roles, but in the setting of like the 1930s Dracula movie, like shot for shot, line for line, and it looks really cool. It's just like oh, this is kind of neat. Like you could almost shoot the entire 1930s Dracula film with them because they inhabit the role. And I feel like that's a great way to start the film, because if you can buy them in those types of roles, you can get used to them and appreciate like the campiness, because for as much as like Nicholas Hoult kind of plays like a desperate character, he's also a charming one. Like he also like he sees like a little bit of like the bright side of his dire situation. He takes a little bit of pleasure in the fact that he can eat bugs and then violently murder people, and he tries to do the right thing. He tries to get only the bad people that Dracula can eat, but then eventually realizes, what, I can't keep this up, and I eventually got to fight Dracula. And I feel like that's where Awkwafina's character comes in perfectly for giving him a little bit of boost in confidence, and also just the violence and gore here. Like if you're wondering if this film is violent, yes, it is very, very, very violent and gory. To the point where in one scene in the film, Nicholas Hoult rips off someone's arm and then impales someone else with that arm. So lots of dismemberment, lots of there's some decapitation, there's blood, there's guts all over the place. You get to see like Nicolas Cage in much grosser makeup for when Dracula is healing after having suffered like a lot of damage. So you get to see a very grotesque version of him. There's a lot of gross out moments in this, which is wonderful. Especially for the fact that this film is also it's horror and it's comedy, but it's a lot of action as well. There's a lot of fight scenes where Renfield takes on just hordes of hitmen and just savages them in the most brutal way, and it's all like quickly paced and absurd, where you have them like chopping off arms and lunging at people and ripping out guts and making just these big blood explosions. At one point, I won't reveal who it is, but at one point he punches someone so hard that blood comes out of their face and poop comes out of them at the same time. And I love how they like set it up with kind of like that classic almost kind of like kung fu, like like almost like Fist of the North Star style, where they show you the x-rays of like what's going on internally to give you a little preview of what's to come, and then you see the explosion, and it's uproarious. So like the film is not perfect, like I said. Like the tone that it's trying to balance here doesn't always quite work, and it might be a little weird to get into a film where Dracula is teaming up with the mafia, and the mafia is just like, yes, we are evil. Like I'm not even exaggerating. That's verbatim one of the lines they say. Like, yeah, we're the mob, and we're evil. Yeah, that's us. But yeah, in terms of like being a campy film, which is I imagine what a lot of people are going to be coming into this for. It's Nicolas Cage. You want to see him like turned up to 11, which is the best kind of Cage you could have for this type of film. And I say like for this type of film because Cage has done more subtle and great performances and stuff like in stuff like Pig. Pig is a wonderful film to see understated Cage. But if Cage is Dracula, you want him to have fun. And he is having fun in this film. And with like the quick pacing and the over-the-top blood and guts and just the surprisingly witty lines that come out of this script at times, for as absurd as it gets, it's a great bit of like quick, wicked fun. So yeah, I know a lot of people are going to have issues with it because they don't feel the tone always works, and Awkwafina might not be the best in a few scenes, and And you feel like it's getting a little bit too giddy with its content. I've heard a few people say this. Personally, I feel like it's just the right amount of ridiculousness, mixed in with like an earnest story of someone trying to change, that it works well. I feel like had like 30 minutes been tacked onto this where it just kept, going over and over with the same gags, it would have become tiresome and exhausting. But thankfully, it's not. It's a perfectly tight and silly horror film where Renfield rips off people's arms and Nicolas Cage drinks blood, and and Ben Schwartz just is having a ball. I mean, everyone in this film is having a ball. It's just it's a lot of fun. That's the best way I can describe it, because I mean, what more do you need? It's Nicolas Cage as Dracula.